You're listening to Intentionally Catholic, a podcast about living our Catholic faith with joy and intention.
Welcome to Intentionally Catholic. I'm Dan Hansen. I'm here with Father Ron Hutchinson.
Hello, everyone.
Father Ron, as I was growing up, and honestly, it wasn't that long ago, we talked about America pretty much as a nation that was founded on traditional Judeo-Christian values. It was a Christian nation. And, honestly, in the last little bit, it feels like if you say that, you're almost borderline getting canceled at this point. You know, things have changed dramatically from what I remember growing up to where we're at now. Now, I know it's been said, you've said it, but I've also read it all over the place on different Catholic media sites, basically talking about how we're living in a new apostolic age.
Yeah, it's very different than what it used to be. You're totally correct. I mean, in reality, our nation was founded with Judeo-Christian values, probably more Christian than Judeo in a sense, but that's the term we use. And, you know, all of our laws, all of our mores, all the way we operated were all based upon traditional Christian values, the 10 Commandments, we'll say, okay? So the way people lived, operated, and how they kind of moved about their day, so to speak, was always guided by faith, and I don't even think it was a question of like, did we not realize it? No, people realized it, but that was the accepted norm. That was how it was. Well, I would say to you in the last 5 to 10 years, definitely, there's been a huge shift, a massive shift in that. We can't anymore say that the decisions that are made for government, the laws, how we operate in society, expectations of what's okay to say, okay to do, all the kinds of things, it's no longer guided by faith anymore. In fact, quite honestly, I would say to you that a person of faith is greatly challenged now to live their faith openly, like they used to.
Greatly challenged, you mean it's challenging to do that rather than being challenged to?
Yeah, it's challenging. Yeah, the vast majority of people I talk to, parishioners, don't feel comfortable in a work setting, even mentioning that they go to church, that they, that faith is a huge guide to their lives. They wouldn't talk about their faith.
Okay, so Grand Rapids Parish, Grand Rapids, Michigan, conservative Grand Rapids, Michigan is what you're talking about. You're saying the greater number of parishioners you speak to don't feel comfortable in their own workplaces here.
Yeah, definitely. I've talked to a lot of people who work in, industry, medical settings, et cetera, that do not feel comfortable at all talking about their faith, that faith is a big part of their lives, because they're just so concerned, number one, about how their fellow workers will respond, but number two, they're afraid that it might affect their job. Really? Yeah, they're concerned about that at some level. Now, that almost majority, I don't know, but to be quite honest with you, it's a significant enough number at this point that we can't say that even in conservative Grand Rapids, that's not an issue.
And you're seeing this grow in the last, how many years you said? 5,
Oh,
7?
Definitely last 5 to 10 years, definitely. And I definitely think it's more amongst, and this may be, it may be amongst the generation, but I would say to anybody that is 20 to say 35, 40 is going to feel that extremely serious at an extreme level.
All right.
Compared to maybe somebody who's 50, 60, because of who they would associate with or who they're around, or, it's just because that generation, things have changed so quickly and so dramatically. I mean, on college campuses today, students do not feel comfortable owning up to their Catholic faith. I mean, if they are people who are involved in Catholic campus ministry of some type of Newman's Association, whatever it may be, they're going to have to be people with good backbones, strong backbones, because, it's just not part of the norm today. We use the words woke, but I mean, I mean, I hate that word being used for a group of people that aren't woke, in my opinion. But
So what do you mean by that? Let's clarify that.
Well,
so you hate the term.
Yeah. Well, the problem is the term woke gives the idea that they have the truth. Okay.
Yep.
It's like Gnosticism. They possess truth that the rest of us just need to find, and then we will have everything we need for survival, so to speak. The problem is, I consider real wokeness, if you want to go with that word, as Jesus Christ. And he's really going to wake you up to truth and life and the way to operate, the way to live. So to be honest with you, yeah, who should be using the term us? But it got stolen, so now it's just a negative term in many respects.
Yeah, lots of terms and lots of symbols have been co-opted.
Oh, yeah.
And taken away, and yeah, we kind of let them go, or maybe we didn't have any say in the matter at all. But you talk about Jesus. Those of us who follow him, and he's the one who's, like you said, truly woke and can wake us up to all the things that we're doing. And all of that, saying that out loud is definitely going to basically at this point in the game, I think the conversations are over at that point, and it becomes a shouting match.
Yeah, it certainly is not a very positive thing for many people, in the sense that if they do that, then they're going to have to be prepared for whatever may come their way, so to speak.
Well, and defending something is so complicated as opposed to tearing something down. You can tear something down, or at least look like you're tearing something down in seconds.
Oh, yeah.
But to try to defend and patch things up. And so what I find happening, I mean, in my own life, you see things on social media, let's say. And yes, I probably could get involved and say, well, I think this is a faulty representation or whatever. But I know it's going to happen.
Oh, it's just not going to be pretty.
It's not going to be a conversation, and it's going to take so long to try to make your case, and you're never going to be able to do it. So I shut up. I just fall back.
And I don't know that you can make a case to a group of people who don't believe that there needs to be a case made to them, in the sense that they believe with all of their being that anything from the past is just wrong. It is antiquated. It serves no purpose in our modern woke world, because it is just medieval. It comes from when people didn't have brains, kind of an idea, where they were directed by other sources how to think, how to move, how to be. And so I don't need that, because it's all about the I today. In me, I don't need you or any group to define me. I define me.
Sure.
And I have all the truth I need for my living. Okay. So that's the problem right now, is when we negate every source of anything that can guide our lives other than ourselves, we become narcissists. We become self-absorbed. And that makes it even hard for people who are individually self-absorbed to have a conversation about anything before they can be not able to talk. I mean, it's partly why right now, even the groups that in the past, we looked at, I don't know if we saw them as adversaries, but just definitely on a different side of the fence than us, they could all kind of stay together. But now you name any group that in the past would have been able to band together for a single solitary goal, meaning I'm thinking like LGBT, pro-abortion, you name it, anything along that line. So it's on the other side of the fence from the church. Even within their own groups today, they can't stay united because they start becoming so ethereal, because it's all about the me. I define what this is, So it becomes very challenging to deal with. It becomes very challenging in any way to counter in an argument, so to speak, or in a discussion. So it's very hard today, in a sense, to be an apologist against that kind of stuff. So we have to be more an apologist for ourselves and not about them.
Okay, so what do you mean by that? Dig into that a little bit.
What I'm saying is we just need to be talking about the truth we possess and keep presenting it, not trying to put what they have to say down. Okay. So I think when we're talking about faith today, I tend to want to talk more in the realm of this is what faith is for me, and this is what it can be for all people. But I'm not going to say like, and let me name a specific group as to why, you're wrong.
Mm-hmm.
It's easier to stay in the realm of this is what we possess.
And how do you avoid, I get what you're saying. How do you walk that line and avoid the whole, well, this is my truth and that's your truth thing?
Well, yeah, and it's interesting because I always say right away, it's not my truth, it's the truth of Christ. And he was real, and he came to offer us salvation, and he came to offer us the way, the truth, and the life. I'm not making something up that comes out of my heart. This has been passed down for 2,000 years. And, I always say to people, and you may not like this argument, but Gamaliel, who was a Jewish authority at the time of Jesus, said, after they crucified Jesus and then they're trying to go after, Peter and all the other apostles, he said, you know what? We just need to leave this alone, because if it's of God, there's nothing we can do about it. And if it isn't of God, it's just going to die anyways. So really, I think that, we can the proof is in the pudding, so to speak. It hasn't survived because the individuals who live it are perfect, or that they are Jesus, or that they are God. The church continues to exist despite human failings and faults, etc. And it still is a truth that can be talked about, passed on to future generations. Even if there will be significant numbers that don't like it, it's still going to be passed on.
Right. So let's say, like, we talked about in the beginning, you talked about people in our area who feel really uncomfortable saying anything, in the workplace for whatever reason. But I can imagine that plays out in any public setting, anywhere where somebody, social media, even the anonymity of that, somebody brings up something online, you want to say something, I could take the angle that you're taking, and and I get that. That could be a conversation. And a lot of times it's not a conversation because, like you said, even within their own groups, they're splintering.
Mm-hmm. Well, first off, I guess I'm going to say to you, I do not believe that for the most part. I mean, here we are doing a podcast, which is social media in its own, sense. Yeah. But we're not having a conversation with other people. We're just presenting our views. Listen to it, don't listen to it. That's your choice. Okay. But as far as like using other forms of social media like Twitter or Facebook or anything like that to try to have conversation or to try to educate, I think it's not going to be possible, to be quite honest with you.
I completely agree.
I think you can present a position that if people want to listen to it, maybe they'll learn something from it. But to try to have conversation back and forth in the comments section is just not going to happen. Okay. The only way to evangelize is one-on-one. Plain and simple, one-on-one. I have to be able to talk to you. You have to be able to talk to me. We have to be able to have a civilized conversation, okay? This isn't about me tearing you down, you tearing me down. This is just us sharing from our hearts and listening, which means that true evangelization is very hard because that means we have to often listen to things we don't agree with. And you have to not become emotional. Right. You have to just sit and say, he or she is not attacking me. They're just giving what they believe. And that's very hard.
The whole evangelization thing is so complicated right now. And it's easy to say that. I just said it. We started this whole thing talking about, we're living in apostolic times. I've heard it referred to, as I said at the beginning, a new apostolic era. Evangelization wasn't easy back then in the original, the first apostolic era, right? It was really, really complicated, like you talked about Gamaliel. It's the same thing. They wanted to persecute the church in a big way. And yet they managed to find a way to persevere. And I think part of that perseverance, and the early apostles being able to evangelize, it was relying entirely on the Holy Spirit to give them the strength to get moving.
Well, they certainly weren't relying upon themselves.
Right.
And, the other part of it is that you have to be a person of faith that believes completely in the message you are sharing. You have to have been changed by that message enough that you say, I can't be quiet about this message. And that is hard. I mean, to be quite honest with you, today, even evangelization or evangelizing, to me, is often just like, for me, it's wearing a collar. Just going out in a Roman collar is evangelizing. Trust me. I get seen clearly, at least, I get seen. I don't think I get seen, meaning me, but my uniform speaks loudly for people. And I can tell by sometimes the way that people look at me, or, the rolling of the eyes that happens or whatever, and I've just learned to go, you know what? This is just my way of evangelizing one way. Now, it's interesting because I've had opportunities in airports when I've worn a Roman collar. And when I was traveling for business, I would wear my Roman collar. I tend to admit when I travel for personal, when I'm on vacation, I just say, you know what, I'm not on duty right now. But when I was traveling for business for the diocese and in the airport going to visit the seminarians or whatever, it was not unusual to have somebody start a conversation about something, ask me a question, and I didn't mind having those conversations. And I'm not going to say they were always pleasant. I mean, Sometimes what people had to say to me, it was hurtful or it was, sad. But on the other hand, I learned to just say, they don't know me. They're not talking about me. They're talking about their viewpoint of something. Mm-hmm. Okay. And so I would try to keep it very objective. This isn't about me. Now, if they attacked me,
sure,
then it was harder,
Right. Well, but I think it's hard anyway. It's something like you said in the beginning, if we truly, truly, truly believe this, it's not something I can compartmentalize within me. My faith isn't. And so when it does get attacked, there is that knee-jerk reaction I have to feel attacked. So you got to calm yourself down, because there's nothing going to happen positive if I'm upset as well. But it's very tough to do that.
I think the hardest thing today is that in order to evangelize, to be people who evangelize, we have to be willing to put ourselves out there. I mean, we're going to have to put ourselves out there, which means that we're going to have to be willing to talk about our truth, talk about why it's so important to us and what the value of it, why it makes a difference in our lives, and be willing to take the arrows that come our direction, so to speak. But being quiet about our faith is not going to help others to find the truth. It's not going to help others find Jesus Christ. They will continue to wallow in their wokeness or their truth, their individual truth. And so, the apostolic times mean that you and I have to face, we are not in a place anymore where everything revolves around how we believe it should be lived. That laws, mores, values, anything reflects what we believe, okay? Which also means that there's going to be times that us just living, is going to be going against the flow. And we have to be okay with that. And we got to decide that it's okay not to go with the flow. And it's funny because where I see that happening right now, politically, I don't think people have any problem right now being on one side or the other and not going with whatever the flow is at the moment. But with regard to faith, boy, they're just so afraid.
No, I completely agree with that. Why do you think that is?
I think because we've always seen faith as a private matter. And interesting enough, I don't know where that came from because it's not true. It's never been a private matter. Okay. But we've turned it into that this is mine and you don't need to know anything about it.
Right.
It's my faith. This is how I live. But what's sad about that is that's why I think there's generations of kids who now are adults and their kids and are adults. Faith hasn't been passed on because everybody's just being quiet about it. You can't pass on faith to your child if you're quiet about it. If they don't know why this is important to you and what value this holds for you and why this is important to live, trust me, they'll find something else that's important to live for.
Well, and then couple that with everything they hear at school or wherever they're at. Everything we hear is that if I say this is truth, even, I'm not big on the my truth. I know exactly what you're saying and I can roll with that. But if I say this is an objective truth, right away we're stuck on the word objective because a lot of the people you're talking to will deny the fact that there's even such a thing
truth.
as an objective truth. And it just shuts everything down.
Well, that's the problem today. Truth is my truth today for most people. We're no longer operating in the sense of there is objective truth. There is truth that cannot be denied. Now, truth is what I believe it is and how I want to look at the world. It's narcissistic. Which makes it impossible because explain to me how we're going to make laws and values or live together in this society with everybody living their truth, individual truth. It becomes total chaos immediately. And I can name that on many levels, and I don't want to get into it right now. But, it's just I'm amazed at what, if somebody says, well, this is my truth, but you have to live my truth. It's like, wait a minute, why do I have to live your truth, but you don't have to live my truth?
Right. It's not consistent and it's not logical.
It's so crazy. It becomes so illogical that it becomes impossible to have conversations.
And that's where, I guess, as we kind of get towards the end of this, we've established the issue, or at least a part of the problem or some of the times that we're living in. But here we are, Catholics trying to live out our faith. What does that look like when it comes to big issues? There's huge issues out there: birth control, abortion, sexual identity, homosexuality. All of these are major, huge issues, and the church has a stance on these things. But if we even breathe the church's stance of these things in the public forum, there's an immediate reaction, and we're not having a conversation at that point. And so, like I said at the beginning, the tendency is to I'm going to just quietly kind of just sneak out of this space, or I'm going to start an argument. How do we do it? I think there are several arenas that we have some, in a sense, control or power in. Okay. Number one arena is ourselves, living that truth that we know and not being hesitant about it with our family and et cetera. We have to say, this is how we're going to live. Okay. That's number one. Number two, I think how we vote or who we vote for can be another place that we can, impact that. Okay. I think we have to be willing to stand up against things that we have the places that we can speak out. And granted, that doesn't mean we're always going to get heard the way we want to be heard or get what we want, but at least we've had the opportunity, like school boards and, things like that. I think there are places we can speak out. But I think we also have to recognize that probably the greatest tool we have is the one that often we feel like, well, nothing's going to happen if I do that. It's prayer. I think we just have to pray for our nation, pray for our world, pray for the Holy Spirit to come upon us to empower us when we need to be empowered, that kind of thing. And there will be times then that we can speak out or say something, or we'll have the strength to do what needs to be done. But if we're going to just rely upon our own strength for that, we're not going to have it, most of us. Where would the apostles have gotten if?
They wouldn't have gotten anywhere without the Holy Spirit. and praying for the Holy Spirit constantly to empower them and give them strength and, pour out on them what needed, and that the words would be the Holy Spirit's and not theirs. I mean, that's the biggest issue.
So you think about the apostles in the upper room, and Jesus has just given them this huge mission. They're waiting for the Holy Spirit to come. The Holy Spirit comes, settles upon them there, and all of a sudden they've got the power and the nerve and the opportunities to go out there. And I think relying on ourselves, like you just said, is going to leave us stuck. But turning it first to God.
Well, the other thing is, think about the fact that when that did happen for them, the outpouring of the Holy Spirit happens, and they go running out of this upper room, and people literally think they're crazy.
Drunk,
by the way,
they
think they've gone nuts. They're drunk, they're nuts, and they're speaking in tongues, and everybody can understand them, and so even then, think about it. People thought they were crazy too. So people are going to think we're crazy at times. There's no doubt about it. But you know what? The truth wins. The truth wins. And I think we just have to trust that the truth always wins out, but it doesn't happen in the time frame we think it's going to happen in.
Well, and what we're tasked with, because the apostles too, they're out doing all of that like we just talked about, but it's not like they had easy times. It wasn't that whole era went for a long time before Christianity was ruled to be okay. And we didn't have to, kill everybody who was a Christian at the time. Mm-hmm. So it's not like that's a guarantee that we're going to just have this easy path ahead of us once the Holy Spirit gets a hold of us and starts leading us.
Oh,
but
no.
It does mean that God's got, the situation in hand. And all we're tasked with is to live in the time that we're in and to do what we can and what he's asking of us in this time. It's not up to us what the outcome is. That's not in our hands. That's in his hands.
It's probably more about seed planting than harvesting.
Right. So here we are, Apostolic era. We're really interested in what everybody out there is thinking. Let us know your comments. For Intentionally Catholic, I'm Dan Hansen.
I'm Father Ron Hutchinson. God bless.
Thanks for listening to Intentionally Catholic. If you like what you heard, please consider sharing our show with a friend. If you have comments, questions, or topics you'd like to hear discussed, please email those to comments@icatholic.show. And be sure to tune in next time for another episode.